Yeah, good morning. Welcome all. Today we have Professor Mainack from IIT Kharagpur. He's an assistant professor at the computer science department there. He completed his PhD from Max Planck and his postdoc from U Chicago and Cornell Tech. He's won several awards and recognitions for his wonderful line of work. The most recent one is, of course, the IIT Trust Lab Early Career Award. And before that, he's won the Google India Faculty Research Award and Distinguished Paper Award at Usenix Soups. So excited to hear Professor Mainack today. Especially he'll be talking about designing social norm grounded privacy preserving systems. Thank you for giving this talk. Excited to hear you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Shruti. And I'm excited as well to deliver this talk. And I guess it will be slightly different than the usual privacy, security, or crypto focused talks. So let me actually start the talk by telling a little bit about myself, my research field, my goals, and then we'll jump right in about the things that I work on. As Shruti already mentioned, I'm Mainack, and I consider myself as a researcher of human factors in security and privacy. I work in usable system design, and I leverage HCI techniques to answer systems and security related questions. Currently, I am an assistant professor of CAC at IIT Kharagpur, and this is my webpage. I think it was also part of the wonderful webpage of Trust Lab. So if you want to know more about me, this is the place to go. Before joining IIT Kharagpur, I was a postdoc at U Chicago and Cornell Tech. And even before that, I was a graduate student at MPI. So this is, I also put the QR code to my webpage and just for easy scanning. Before I start diving right into my research field, I want to acknowledge my multiple collaborators, students, and friends. I wrote at least one paper of each one of them, and I missed many of my current and past collaborators, but they're essentially my strength and my community. So I work in security and privacy, and I primarily call Usenix security, SAM, CCS, PETs, and SOUPs, and also to extend NDS is my community. And in the security and privacy field, I primarily focus on measurement and analysis of user behavior in web-based systems. So how do I measure and analyze the user behavior using two methods? First one is definitely internet measurement, that is collecting user-generated data, trying to figure out what they want, what they do, what kind of security problems do they face. And I publish this type of measurement work in earlier into www and Phonext. However, another way or the primary way of knowing what the users want or what they need is to do user studies. I do a lot of user studies with the systems that I often build or investigate, and I publish that kind of work in ICWSM, CSCW, and ACM Chi. The specific niche community I would say that I belong to will be called the usable security and privacy community. And this kind of work is published both in HCI venues as well as security and privacy venues. The goal of this usable security and privacy research is twofold. First, having a data-driven and empirical understanding of user privacy and security behaviors and their expectations, and leveraging this understanding to build systems that align well with user expectations. Now, why this community came into being is prettily summarized in this figure. Essentially, there is this comic, taken from internet, basically says that there is a rumble between two parties. And one side, there are firewalls, encryption, antivirus software, the whole community that is working towards betterment of security. And the other side, there is human error named Dave. And so far, human error is winning. So essentially, in my research area, the broad goal is to build systems that can assist users and strengthen the weak link in security. In this field, I generally work, and my general research method can be summarized into 3 steps. First, I acquire user behavioral data from using web-based system measurement and via user studies. I analyze this data to model user security and privacy behaviors. And based on this model and the understanding, I design and build usable, private, secure mechanisms for web-based systems. If you want me to further summarize my work, I would tell that I work on empirical data analysis and data-driven informed system design. Using this method, I primarily want to design, build, and audit systems for managing privacy and security of user data as required by social norms. Now, I just told a new word, I believe, and this is a technical word, social norms. So what are social norms and what is their relationship with privacy? Let's start with an example. Okay? Let's start with an example of Cambridge Analytica. How many of you know about Cambridge Analytica? Like at least heard of it? Some? Anyone? No? Okay. I cannot see it, but okay. Awesome. Awesome. Good. I'm in the right community. So in the Cambridge Analytica scandal, around 2015-ish onwards, millions of users, I think its number was 300 million plus, users' data was collected via a Facebook app. And a company named Cambridge Analytica allegedly used this data for targeting users and affecting election. Now, this data was collected via Facebook's official API, and at some level, like I would say technically, they are not in the wrong. It was already in Facebook's terms and service when you signed up for Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, even WhatsApp, Telegram, whatsoever, to actually collect your data or make the developers able to collect the data. But still, it became a scandal, specifically when supposedly this data affected 2017 US election. And consequently, there is a huge public uproar, and in spite of Facebook's abiding by Facebook's terms and services, the Facebook as well as the app was fined. In fact, Facebook was expected to pay over $5 billion by FTC over privacy issues. So what I want to take away from this Cambridge Analytica scandal is that there's something wrong as the public uproar and regulators' reaction shows. So in fact, overall, by Cambridge Analytica scandal, general expectations about acceptable data usage are violated. And in technical terms, we can call that social norms are violated. So with this example, this Cambridge Analytica and that society was pretty upset about it, I think we are ready for the definition of social norm. So Larson and Gorman gave the definition of social norm as rules developed by a group of people that specify how people must, should, may, should not, and must not behave in various situations. And if we bring this idea of social norm from the sociological theories to the era of internet and systems where I'm more comfortable, I can say that social norms are also something that dictate how systems that people use must, should, may, should not, and must not behave. And then based on these social norms, people actually decide whether a system is behaving erratically. In fact, but this is not my thesis per se, and people worked on it for a long time. In fact, people worked on it from late 80s. So Don Norman, the father figure of HCI, and also Gaver, published in 1991, and more recently, Prof in 2022, shows that social norms and privacy in systems are very interlinked. In fact, they pointed out the following process. A new technology comes. When it's new technology, you can think right from portable cameras from 1850s to the internet, Web 2.0, 3.0, everything. So new technology comes, the users then perceive their affordance, what the system can do. Then users collectively as a society calculate the privacy risk and system benefit. And consequently, they socially negotiate the context to use a particular service. You use service Google for a reason and Amazon for another reason. And with time, the social norm stabilizes. So at the beginning, these norms, these rules of how to use a system is in flux, but over time it stabilizes. So that's the process of negotiating the social norms. Let me take an example. Say in social media, or say Facebook, right? Or its subsidiaries, Instagram, you can think, or others. They are launched. Users identify that sort of like their affordance, what Facebook can do, and they see that Facebook is easy to use and free platform for social sharing of data with your social contact. Users over time calculate the privacy risk and try to see that who can see my information, how they would use it, and so on. And then they use, they know how to use, as socially by word of mouth from others, they actually know how to use privacy settings. They identify type of content that should be shared on Facebook and should never be shared on Facebook. And finally, the current social norm stabilized. Currently, we share personal content on Facebook and with family and friends. And for, say, sharing professional content, we often have Twitter. And for Instagram, we have pictures and more common ephemeral content. So this is an example of social privacy norms for Facebook. And how these norms can be violated and what problems can be set, or can there be? Let me give one example. So say the users have an incorrect or imperfect perception of a system. And this happens often when a system is opaque. Think like Facebook API or APIs which the users have no idea about. So when in such opaque system functionality like Facebook API is introduced, users are not really aware of them. And so there is no social norm regarding it. Then the third-party developers can collect data using this API and use it for in context that a society never expected. For example, for election manipulation. And thus, there's a violation of social norms. So irrespective of whether it violates the terms of service of Facebook at that point or not, simply because the social norms are violated, there is an uproar. And oftentimes, the users, as a result, users leave the system, change their behavior, or worse, regulators come after the system developers because they fail to understand social norms and bake it into their system. And this type of violation of social norms happened over the last 100 years or more. In fact, people worked on finding out when the social norms are violated and when the privacy is, people thought the privacy is also violated. Smith in 2004 mentioned that each time when there was renewed interest in protecting privacy, it was in reaction to new technology because they violate social norms with new affordances or new ways of sharing data, collecting data, analyzing data. So there is a need, consequently, because we are living in an era of emerging new technologies hitting us and making our lives different, for better or for worse, there is a need for understanding social privacy norms for new tech. And consequently, there is a need for social norm-grounded system design. Now, one question that you might ask is that, I understand social norms are rules and they're needed to be baked into systems, but how do you know about social norms? So in literature and even in my research, generally we find that social privacy norms are expressed by shared mental models by a group of users in particular context. And often also for a little bit older or mature technologies, social privacy norms are also expressed by regulations on laws, what a system can and cannot do. So for social norm-grounded system design, we have two particular steps. One is identifying the social norms given a particular context by, of course, using data, because that is what we do, and audit or build systems to align with these norms so that a social norm violation does not happen. I work in this space, but definitely it's a huge space. A lot of people are working on it. So for the rest of the talk, I'll first tell you about my research directions on aligning systems with the social norms. And then I'll take two case studies, as I promised in the abstract. First is understanding the cultural norms of social disclosure in social media and about how social norms affect the adoption of modern crypto wallets. And finally, I'll give you an overview of a few more threads of my research, and I will conclude. So first, I'll tell you about my research directions on this field of aligning systems with social norms to protect privacy and security. I am pretty interested in social norms grounded system design, and I work in all these different subfields. Don't try to read it. I'll go over them one after another. So I look into different systems, different new and emerging technologies, right? The one that I work most on is our archival systems. These are systems or subsystems which store content, past content over decades or couples of decades. Think Facebook, think Google Drive, think almost all the user-generated content repositories. In this systems for archival systems, I work on understanding the social norms surrounding privacy of old content as well as privacy of deleted content. In fact, we coined a term called deletion privacy. That is, people do care about privacy of the deleted content and they're violated pretty routinely. I published this research in multiple different venues, including using security, multiple papers there, CCS, NDSS, PET, SOOPs, and Asia CCS most recently. The second are the new technologies that I focus on. I would say it's a little bit matured now because regulations are pouring in right now, is on third-party tracking. So I worked on, in this field, I worked on bringing tracking transparency to end users. I worked on it with multiple people, both from the US, EU, and India, who have very different regulations, and I continue to work on it. We published this research in CCS, website, and EuroUSEC. The third system I focused on was privacy-preserving technology, which is newish. Specifically, their adoption is definitely new. For example, VPNs. In fact, in the last month, we got a paper accepted that we'll present a couple of months back, in August, in Using Security, which looks into norms of VPN use for matured users. And we actually show that matured users actually move away from VPNs, and we identify the systematic reason. Can we see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Sure, but are somebody getting Shruti and the room to join right now?
Yeah. I'm sorry for the interruption. I think you can resume now.
Okay, sounds good then.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the quick turnaround. And as we can see, that is what new technologies do to us. Okay. So my fourth uh, emerging technology that I look at is the security of financial transaction, and more specifically, I focus in micropayment apps and cryptocurrency wallets. The cryptocurrency wallets work is published in CCS 23, and the preliminary version of UPI or micropayment apps was published in 22 poster. It's in submission right now, the full paper. The last one that I look at is the cultural norms of social disclosure. That is how the social norms of privacy changes across different cultures. We published this work in CSW recently. And of course, we started working on understanding social norms around the most, I would say, recent emerging tech, that is LLMs and AI, and going into the field of responsible AI and so on. So if you're interested to talk about it, just let me know. In this talk, further, I will focus on two sub-directions of my research on social norms. First one is the security of financial transactions in cryptocurrency wallets. And second one is the cultural norms of social disclosure, because I actually feel that we can connect really well with these two words. We'll see. To summarize, my research direction on aligning system with social norms of privacy and security spans multiple different domains. And the prominent ones are archival systems, third-party tracking, VPNs, finance, and as well as cultures, and how social norms differ by this new tech and culture. Now, next, I'll tell you two use cases out of all the work that I have done. First one is understanding the cultural norms of social disclosure. This work is nicknamed A Tale of Two Cultures, and it talks about comparing the interpersonal information disclosure privacy norms on Twitter. The picture basically shows two cultures. The first one on the left is Bara Bazaar in Kolkata during Holi, which is the city that I'm from. And the second one, any guesses which city is this, which is like very different than the left one?
It says New York.
New York.
New York.
Yeah. Pretty much, Times Square. And this is the other city that I live. They are extremely different. And that actually shown me that how the norms differ across different cultures. And this is a joint work with a bunch of undergrads. It's the biggest team that I ever led from BYU and from a few master students from IIT Kharagpur, as well as there are people from Utah and Central Florida. Okay, so this talk is all again about, or this part of the talk is again about new tech, which is social media, because social media transcends space. Social media allows people to connect across the globe, right? And they mediate the disclosure about information. They mediate the social interaction, and they shape interpersonal relationships. Now, about interpersonal relationships, we know from offline world that there this offline disclosure norm, that is what you will tell me in offline world, depends on your culture. The emotion, the topics, the type of content shared that you can do with me depends on your and my culture, right? So we just asked that, this type of cultural specific social norms and misinterpretation of them are important because they cause friction. They might cause physical danger, not understanding what they say, not understanding what they do, and not understanding how you behave, how you should behave in a new culture. So we started with the hypothesis that different cultural expectations can cause misunderstanding. They often stem from social media, and they can create unintentional conflict. And this work is generally termed as multi-party privacy. And multi-party privacy essentially means that when users disclose or share information about someone else, multi-party privacy or MPP, they is quite underexplored. And specifically for textual content, the multi-party privacy is almost never analyzed. People mainly worked on tags in pictures or bystander privacy, which is part of multi-party privacy, but never with textual content that can directly say that what someone is doing, what others are doing, and disclose information. Moreover, these studies, whatever little has been done, they are focusing on norms of Western culture. They are never looked into like how does MPP, multi-party privacy norms, play in intercultural setting. We aim to bridge that gap. Specifically, we focused on two cultures. One is India, which is collectivist, which means they will focus this culture, our culture focuses on group and social cooperation, compared to individualistic culture, which is the US, in our study, which portrays independence, self-sufficiency, and uniqueness. We specifically studied the disclosure norms across these two cultures on Twitter. And while comparing US and India, we chose these two countries because they are popular, of course, and they have large user bases. They pointed out like US and India, Western versus Asian cultures. They have English as common language, which actually helped us in doing the analysis. And we actually collected the public tweets between August and December 2019 and January 2020. We could collect the data from this. Any idea what is another reason? I would say the unspoken reason in the slide that we chose these two cultures while identifying the privacy, social, cultural norms. Why we chose US and India? Yes, please.
Most of the are migrated to US. They have a major chunk in US as well. I think so. Can you hear us?
Yeah, you can hear us. You can hear what they said, right?
Yes, I can. And well, that is not quite the reason because we actually filtered the tweets that geolocally posted from India. But yes, that was definitely like one of the reasons. But there is a more practical reason, and the reason is that our research team comprised of people from the US and from India. So we actually had a better idea about interpreting the social norms and the privacy norms and validate them in some sense. And we'll show that in this study, if that makes sense. So we set out to identify disclosure behavior about the interpersonal relationship between these two countries. And we asked, how do interpersonal information disclosure norms differ between users from these two countries? Or rather, we wanted to know that how does privacy play out in India and the US, specifically when they're talking about other people. Our paper explored this difference, this cultural norm difference between India and US across multiple dimensions like frequency of disclosure, the topics of disclosure, whether they are identifying, they're disclosing sensitive information about others, the emotions of disclosure, and also the positive and negative sentiment. But for doing these studies, right, we needed to have data. So what we did was that we divided the study into three parts. First, we created a culture-sensitive taxonomy of relationship words to identify that what are the relationships that in India and US users generally use. Then we collected tweets containing this relationship words, which are actually about relationships using NLP. And finally, we analyzed this data by identifying the culture-specific norms for emotion, topic, and content. So let's look into each of the stages one after another. First, how to create a culture-sensitive taxonomy of relationship words, because that was the first challenge that we faced. We did not really know that what are the words that people used in their tweet, in their regular language about relationships. Which relationships do they actually use colloquially? So we did a hybrid card sort study. This is an interface card sort system that we created, and it started with, of course, our research team members. 3 US and 2 Indian authors generated an initial saturated list of relationship words, and there are total 177. What does saturated list mean? Well, it just means that we started with 2 US and 1 Indian authors. We asked them to create a list of relationship words using dictionary and everything. And when they say like, we couldn't really think of anything else, we brought in another one of US and another one of Indian authors, and as like, look at it and try to make it better, try to improve it. So finally, all 5 of them couldn't really find any more relationship words. But then this is our research team, so there might be some bias. So we then recruited participants from Amazon Mechanical Turk who are verified Indian and US users. Total, we took 58 Indian and 63 US users and asked them to do a card sort study where they sorted this relationship words into 10 categories. Higher level 10 relationship categories. They could add more relationship words. They can add more categories. The initial relationship words were created by our authors, and the initial categories were created based on relational model theory, or RMT, which used cross-culturally. At the end, we ended up with 179 Indian and 178 US relationship words. Specifically, in our taxonomy of relationship words, that is, I called it a taxonomy because there is 178 words, and each of the word is part of different relationship categories.
Mainack, there's a question here.
Yes, please.
I have a small query, actually a little stupid one. If 2 words are like synonyms of each other in that case?
People, pardon me?
2 words which you identified, if they are like synonyms of each other, I mean beautiful and gorgeous.
Beautifully and?
Gorgeous.
If 2 words are synonyms of each other, then
Synonyms of each other.
Yes, there are 2 words of synonyms of each other, like Baba and father. We picked both because we wanted to ultimately create tweets and text which contain those words. Does this answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Sure. So we definitely actually also figured out there is confounding factors, like different participants thought that same words might belong to different categories. So we ultimately took the words where at least 80% of participants in a culture thought that they should be included into in a particular category. So there is some majority voting that went on here. And even after creating this taxonomy, we actually saw there is some divergence between US and India. Like in uncle, this word, the US users were tagged, they tagged it as extended family, and India it's family. Wife of husband, in the US, it is tagged as lover. In India, it is tagged as family. Right? So there is some divergence, right? At the norms, the rules, that what you call like lover is definitely a closer relationship than family, but that is how people feel in different cultures. In total, we actually had 81 US words, 112 Indian words out of the 178 that we curated, and they are classified into 9 relationship categories. The details are in the paper. Now, once we have those words, now we set up in finding out tweets containing those words, right? That's the obvious thing that you would do. So we collected the initial set of tweets, and we actually just used a tweet scraper called Twint to collect historical English tweets from India and US containing relationship words. We collected a random sample of tweets, and we identified that they are spread out over the time period that we collected the tweet from, and they are spread out in terms of popularity. In total, we collected 2 million US tweets and 272,000 Indian tweets. That's a good number. But then we actually identify public tweets. They're posted between August and December 2019 and January 2020. Now, although this is a good number, we actually figured out most of them were noise. So when we started reading the tweets, random sample of it, we actually saw that they're not talking about social norms of relationship. They're talking about something else. They're not even using the word in a relationship sense. So we needed to filter down tweets about the posted personal relationship. So the example would be, say, for personal tweet is that my daughter's health has been one of my biggest worries. She was a premature baby, right? With the daughter tagged. And the noise or non-personal tweet was something like Kobe and his daughter, may they rest in peace forever. My next jump shot is for her. So this is about Kobe Bryant and his daughter getting killed in a car accident. He's a basketball star. So we wanted to identify the personal ones. For that, we created a dependency parsing based classifier. Specifically, we identified possessive tuples like me, my, or our. And our idea was that when you say my daughter, I did it, our father, it is possibly personal. So essentially, using dependency parsing, we identify the tweets where the relationship words from our taxonomy has a relationship or has a dependency with the possessive tuples. We created a novel classifier in using a manually curated round true. We identify that our classifier has 86% F1 score, which is with 92% precision and 81% recall. We deemed it suitable for our study, but it also cut down our data set. Now, our final data set had 417,000 tweets from the US and 33,000 tweets from India. Using these tweets, we set out in identifying what are the social rules about what you should and should not tell about your relationships, like your family. We looked into multiple different things, but in this talk, in the interest of time, I'll only talk about what are the topics that Indian people talk about and US people talk about when they talk about different relationships. Now, this is a screenshot from the paper, and you don't need to read it. I just want to show you that this is in the paper. That's true. And we identify the topics using LDA, and then using thematic analysis, which is it's a technique to identify topics of disclosure. So let me actually walk you through this and tell you the juicy things about the social norms of disclosure, of privacy, of what people should tell. So there are some common topics between US and India, and there are some different topics. Let's focus on the different topics first. So I show you in the table three columns, the common topics, the US specific topics, and India specific topics. Say in US, when people talk about family, they talk about politics, right? And in India, when people talk about family, they talk about patriotism. That is what our analysis pointed out. So it is okay to talk about patriotism in India, but it's not very common in the US. There's difference even within common topics. Like when you look into complaining, like what people should complain about when you're in the US, what you can vent about and what you cannot, there is a difference. US tweets complained about family members. It is acceptable. Versus in India, they complain about organizations, not about their family, not about a person. That is not quite acceptable. And I have a fantastic example for you. So this is real tweets. Glad to grow with my beloved aunt, for the keyword aunt, versus my expletive, aunt, expletive pissed me off. That is in the US. We looked into definitely more sensitive data like location information and what can and cannot be cannot be posted in India and the US and so on. But the difference is there. So I see there is a chat. Should I?
Do you want me to read it out?
That would be better.
Okay. So the question is by Naveen. He asks, what is your estimate of how different would the methods in this research have been if you had access to and used GPT-4 and all filtering / classification? And do you think the results would have been the same?
That will be that will be different, Naveen. And great question. The reason is that so I have a slide on that. Our next stage in this, so it's published in CSC 2023, CSCW 2023, and now our work is identifying whether GPT-4 already have these biases, this cultural disclosure, what can and cannot be told in different cultures, and how that affected the LLM training, and they're helping with the people with assistive technologies. They are different.
Thanks.
Sure. And if you are interested, I would be more than happy to talk about it. We are in the brainstorming phase. We collected some data, did some interviews, and then matched it with GPT-4, and they are different, and we are working on it right now. Thank you.
Sure, I'll get in touch.
Sure. Okay, so here's some takeaways from this work. The collectivist cultures, we actually find out they focus on in-group harmony. That means that you should post more positive tweets whenever you're in India. And the supervisor-subordinate relationships, they're less studied offline, but they're very different distinctive features in online communication within US and India. In the US, we have a more horizontal structure in tweets about your supervisors, whereas in India, you have a very hierarchical status. And then acceptable topics definitely differ. In India, complaining about your family or self-promotion is looked down upon, and the US, it's actually pretty common. So you should check the paper to know more, and there are really, really fun things. For example, that in India, people actually never, when they talk about their wives, they always talk about responsibilities. And in US, when they talk about their wives, generally it is about how they love them, so on. But there's a generalizable findings, and things differ when you're looking into specific people. So no comments on that. Okay, so what's next? Essentially, we are looking into how these differences actually harm people, and how we can develop digital assistant technologies for mitigating such harms and teach cultural norms, because GPT-4 is not really good enough to do that. At least that is what we are finding, but we need more robust experiments to establish it. With this, I'll quickly, yes, questions, comments? Okay, with this, I'll just take 5-10 minutes at most to actually talk about my recent work, again in November 2023 from CCS, which talks about how social norms affect adoption of modern crypto wallets and how, as cryptographers, help to mitigate the social norms. So this work is, okay, so it will finish in 10 minutes. So Sarva just heads up. So we have to, so in this work, we uncovered the impact of mental models towards adoption of multi-device wallets. And this is a joint work with folks from Purdue and Safra and Visa. So cryptocurrency is important, and the user base is growing, right? There's like 430 million users in 2023, and the market size is 10.27 billion. It will reach 48 billion in next 6 years. That seems important. And users, when they want to do cryptocurrency wallet, cryptocurrency for trading, for mining, whatsoever, they need cryptocurrency wallets. These cryptocurrency wallets generally are associated with a secret key and public key pair, mostly. And based on where these keys are stored, they can be divided into 2 parts: single device and multi-device. Single device is where the key is stored on a single device, like a phone, laptop, hardware key, your brain, or writing it on paper. On the other hand, there's multi-device, where the key is distributed across multiple devices. The multi-device can happen in 2 ways: multi-sig, where there are actual multiple keys, or threshold, where shares of same keys. I think this crowd might know what this actually means, and I'm not going into the crypto, but this difference exists. And this difference actually gives rise to different security guarantees. For single device, and the security guarantee is important, specifically because single device is the prevalent one, and 20% of all Bitcoins are stolen today. 2.6 billion dollars of Bitcoin stolen from cryptocurrency exchanges since 2012, and total crypto hacks, which are not publicized, might be more. So security guarantees are important. And single device actually gives the security guarantee that only one device needs to be compromised. And there is no key recovery in the vanilla single device wallets. Multi-device came to rescue. In general, for multi-device, the adversary needs to compromise multiple machines, and it was proven to be secure on practical network models by Yale et al. On 2021. But one fact remains that single device wallets seem to be more popular. We set out to understand why. What is the reason? What are the norms around this wallet usage? Are there some problem and not misalignment of technology and norms? Specifically, identify 3 research questions, and I'll focus on the first 2. The first one is that what are the current preferences of users? What are the norms essentially? And then we try to see that, one reason might be that some of you might already is murmuring that, they might not even know about multi-device norms, multi-device wallets. So we asked whether by providing essential information, teaching them about this more secure wallets under certain attack models, do users want to move, at least when they self-report this data? So to answer this research question, we created a study where we actually interviewed, surveyed people. So we first asked general questions about their cryptocurrency wallet usage and preferences. Then we educate the users about cryptocurrency wallets and their security guarantees by showing 2 videos. And of course, we might ask that, they might not have learned anything, like many of our students. So we had a test and to check how much did they learn. And finally, we asked that, with the new knowledge, what are your preferences and why? We launched this study on Prolific Academic, a crowdsourcing platform. Total, we surveyed 357 users from US, UK, and Canada. 62.7% has bachelor's degree, so they're educated, and 72.2% are full-time employees. And they did at least more than 5 cryptocurrency transactions in the past year. Okay, and almost 71% was male, so we have a male bias in our data. 21%, 28% was female, and 2% preferred not to answer. Our survey took around 22 minutes to complete, and we compensated the users for this survey as per the community norms. So with this data, what are the exact preferences that we found for cryptocurrency wallets? Well, there are 2 user groups. One are newbies who started for the fear of missing out, or FOMO, around 86 users, and non-newbies. They are primary venue of, they generally trade cryptocurrencies. They are very interested in technology, and many of the features between these 2 groups are statistically significantly different with high effect size. The results are in the paper, but this is an interesting finding that there are newbies and non-newbies, right? Within cryptocurrency people, and they have different knowledge. But both the groups, why they are similar is that both groups mostly use single device wallets, because almost 50% were not familiar. So we said to rectify it. We showed them the videos. We asked them questions. Do you know that this happens? This is actually better. Is there a question? Hello.
No, there is no question.
Okay. So, now the interesting bit comes in. After we educated them, told them it is multi-device is better until in this context, which are very practical, still 51% of the people told, 49% told they will not shift, and 51% told they would shift. So almost half of them told they would not shift. So why? We asked them the reason, and then we use thematic analysis to figure out what are the intrinsic reasons from their response. So the people who are not willing to shift has reasons like this. They actually identified several reasons, but 2 of them are wrong. Even after knowing, they told that single device wallets are more secure. And they pointed out that I do not want to lose control of the keys. And both of them technically are not correct. So we dig deeper. So like, what do they mean by it? Here are some quotes to substantiate their feeling. P57, participant 57 told, I like to keep things simple, easy to access and without complexity. Participant 1 told, I prefer to be responsible for my keys. If I lose them, that is my fault. And then participant 51 told, I'm happy to be in control of the key as I believe the risk is low. And participant 107 told, I prefer the single storage location. That means the single device wallets. One location is easier to secure from multiple ones. So users thought very differently than the developers, the cryptographers. And they actually believe that even having shares among different devices is riskier than having no shares. We have more results in the paper, but to summarize, multi-device wallets have low adaptation because there is some wrong mental model about security of wallets. And we actually identified needs to nudge and educate users while customizing them for two user groups who have very different knowledge. And we identify novel cryptographic schemes to give more power to the user, like greater weightage to client devices from a server while hosting the key. More results and statistical findings are in this paper. I put a QR code here if you want to scan it. Now it is also an SMDL, so if you just search the name, you'll get it. Okay, so finally, I'll just take 5 more minutes, if I can, for giving an overview of 2 more threads of my research. Is that okay, Sarba?
Yeah, it should be fine.
Okay, thank you. Because we lost some time in the middle. But okay, so two research directions that I am pretty excited about, and I work on them aside from the social norms, but they're related, but still I would say they are different in their goal. The first one was combating online manipulation, of course, hate speech and bias and COVID-19 misinformation, and more recently, identifying logical fallacies in online discourse, especially now the election is here. We are actually seeing many of these things. Like we actually looked into ad hominem fallacies, how they're used in political discourse in different countries. We published this in ICWSM and CCW. And another of my thread of my research is privacy and security education, where recently in CHI this year, we published a paper on teaching people about privacy on Facebook using visual intervention. This is also supported by Facebook, like using funds and knowledge.